things is we have to listen to ourselves intuitively. Actually, how do I feel? What's triggering me? Okay, and then kind of look at 2-3 different points of reference and triangulate what's going on, so that actually you can move yourself forward faster rather than waiting for one person to come back with the results to this answer, which we know. And God bless our NHS, I'm here because of that these days. It still takes time for that to happen. So my recommendation is speak to 2 or 3 and triangulate.
Yeah, but of course, the biggest problem, though, of course, with any dietary-related problem is that it's only you, the individual, not just you per se, but it's the individual who knows what they eat day in, day out, who sees what they eat, who sees what they don't like, what they like, so on and so forth. You're the only one, unfortunately, in that kind of position who can really determine what the problem is. I know the professionals can give a few pointers to say, well, look...
Someone let the werewolves out.
Evidently, it also is not the only one who can give a few pointers as well. Boom, boom. Look, the point is that I know that sort of it's we go to the professionals because we cling on to them sort of doing, as it were, the hard work for us. But this is what the awful problem is with dietary-related problems: is it's kind of on our own head, be it to be able to determine what the problem is. And that in itself is just, it's kind of a case of where the heck do you start? So, I mean, I know that the food diaries are all well and good, but how do you even go about logging all the ingredients and the amount of stuff you eat? It's blooming hard work to determine this stuff.
Absolutely. And this is when you literally have to read the back of the ingredients. So, on the back of the packet. So if you're walking around a supermarket, you can tell the people that are really going into this, because they are the people that stand in the same aisle for at least 15 minutes with every single product. And you have to look at this. So some of the key factors for me with Crohn's and the Candida diagnosis that I went through was sugar. Sugar and also yeast products as well. So you have to look on the back of every single packet to see if it's got some kind of sugar included in that. And there are, there's even now there's 5, 6, 7 different types of sugar even in one product, going by different names. So you have to get really, really savvy on that. And if you're having one thing and you experience a reaction from it, you just have to go back and eliminate and work through that stuff. Like really reduce it down to the base, like I say, the basics, and then rebuild it back up as Russ did with, the Marmite situation before.
I absolutely don't want to put you on the spot, because I know that you're not here in a medical capacity. So please don't sort of feel obliged to answer this if you're not sure what the answer is. And may I make it very clear as well, Nathan's not here in a medical capacity. So this is personal experience. But I wonder sort of at what stage people would be forgiven for thinking that they blurred the lines between maybe an intolerance towards something and Crohn's disease, because clearly there must be a massive difference. But I guess it's how do you actually know what that difference is? I suppose that sort of the obvious thing is really just to go and speak to the doctors about it, really, and get tested if you think you're allergic to something, I suppose. But
there is that one of go and see the doctors. I'd say the other part though, which is really important, is if you've got an intolerance to things, and I see this a lot, it gives me a bit of an upset stomach, but it's okay, I'll do it again next week, and I'll do it again the week after. And for me, when you're pushing your system and your system's telling you shouldn't be doing those things, but people keep pushing it, you're going to end up shifting an intolerance to a serious problem, because eventually your system's going to back up on you quite literally and say, do you know what, we're not going to do this anymore. And one of the key things that actually happen, which is a really interesting thing, I think there's still a lot of doctors and surgeons out there will tell you that your appendix doesn't do anything. Actually, some of the more recent information says that what your appendix actually does, it acts like a little farm, growing bacteria to support your gut flora. So when you have an upset stomach, it then refloods your system with bacteria to support healthy gut activity. Well, now, if you keep getting an upset stomach because you've got an intolerance or causing it, you're going to make your appendix overwork to the point where actually it's going to get infected and say, do you know what, you've got a serious problem, you can't keep doing this, go to the hospital. Next thing you know, you're having your appendix taken out and you actually haven't got that support mechanism in your body anymore.
I did when I was 15. I got appendicitis collapse, and that was that. You've touched on so many interesting things. My belief, and I'd love to know where you stand on this, Nathan, is that eventually they will say sugar. They'll put it up there with tobacco and cigarettes.
They need to.
I live to hope that will happen one day. I really believe in hope. I can't say it's, to me, sugar is just a perfectly legal drug that people take gross advantage of because they can't want.
Like Nathan,
Cannot help how much they have of it.
I try and avoid like the plague, and for reasons I'm not going to go into now because it'll take the focus away from you. But I honestly believe that in the future, that sugar will be seen as bad and as unhealthy as getting a packet of Marlboro Lights or any other cigarette brand. It's a shocker. It's a shocker, and it's only the huge addiction that people have to sugar and the fact they shove it, whether you like it or not,
in everything.
So much stuff, and it's so bad for you. It's so bad for you. So if nothing else, that's just another thing that you've highlighted.
May I just say, I'm really sorry to do this, but sadly, we are flat out of time. But thank you so much, seriously, because for being look, there are some conditions. I think all conditions are quite difficult to speak about, but there are some that are particularly personal and they're a bit sort of embarrassing here and there. And at the end of the day, everyone has bodily functions, is the most diplomatic and cleanest way I can put it. But some people, for whatever reason, don't like to talk about it. So thank you very much indeed for being kind enough. And look, I suppose the word is brave enough to tell us about it. We really appreciate it.
And good luck with the move, you mad fool.
Yeah.
And we've got a few weeks to do that. There's two things that I'd like to kind of just drop into this conversation in order to before. There's one part that I really also wanted to talk about, and we didn't have time to talk about it today, and that is men with ileostomies and colostomy bags. I'd love to come back and talk about that again.
Absolutely.
Well, Nathan, if there's any one answer to that, you'll just have to come back again.
I'm good with this. I mean, thank you very much. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I've just started doing some research about emotions and Crohn's disease and emotional triggers for where people have flare-ups and stuff. So I've got a link, I can get it, but I can share it with you all. If you could share it on the website. If anyone wants to talk to me about emotional triggers and Crohn's, please come and find me on Facebook, because I want to get as much research on this as possible so I can help as many people as possible with it as well.
We are not worthy, sir. Thank you. That's amazing. You're definitely coming back and you're going to tell us about both of those things. Thank you. Have a great festive season, and we'll see you hopefully all being well in 2021.
Amazing. Thank you, love. Cheers. Bye.
Bye. There we go. Look at that.
Top
strong guests. Strong guests. Right. Okay. From one strong guest to another. Oh, yes. The glamour that is.
I thought you were going to say one strong guest to one strange guest.
Strange but true.
Delighted to report that she appears to be back in her home territory this week and not from the confines of a mysterious location in Hertfordshire.
Indeed. Hertfordshire threw me out. Hertfordshire went into sort of a Chantal Tier 3, please stay away lockdown. So now back in southwest London.
Have they? Did it stop the filming of what and by the way, everybody, I don't know what the project is because a mouth like the Blackwall Tunnel would be a disaster. So did it stop the filming and everything? Or
No. We were doing some pilot programming for a new TV channel, and it all went pretty well, to be honest. So all fine. Thank you for asking.
I've got a question because Phil loves doing that, and he loves his little dance and everything. He's in a very feisty mood. I'm warning you now. You ex-head of BAFTA LA, you've met all the stars, you've worked with all the stars. I was always dazzled. There's a picture of you, and I go, oh my God, all my heroes up there, and you're just casually having lunch. Tom Cruise. I know it's slightly off-beat, but all right, I'm going to just put my wares on the table. I thought he was absolutely 100% to behave in the way that he behaved, to be that strong and to be that disciplined. Where do you stand on that? Because you're a professional.
Difficult, really. I mean, what you see is what you get with Tom Cruise. What I know from people who have worked with him, he's a fantastically generous human being. Everybody absolutely adores working with him. I didn't work with him personally, but he came along and presented awards at 2 BAFTA events, and he was a BAFTA favourite. I think he's an audience favourite. So, I mean, it's really difficult to make any sort of judgment. All I know is from what I hear from other people around me in the industry is that nobody's got a bad word to say about him. So clearly his religious beliefs are challenging to some people. And I don't know any more about that than what I read in the press or see on television. So very difficult for me to comment. That's probably me hedging my bets and not the answer you wanted.
No, on the contrary, I'd say that's the most diplomatic answer one could possibly get, and bravo to you for. So
I
there
was
we
just
go.
going to say, Shant, and as I said, you're the professional here, so you were right in the coalface of it, so to speak. But people on the outside don't realise you're talking about a multi-million pound project. This could be north of 80 million pounds easily. It's his responsibility. And also the point he was making is the rest of the film industry, which is worth billions of dollars, is looking to him to say, yes, we can still make films in a way that is safe, that will not spread COVID, that we're taking it very seriously. And I agree with him.
I think that's fair. I mean, I know people in production at the moment who are scrupulous about making sure that all of the guidelines are followed. And actually, people are back in the work environment. And I think as long as guidelines are followed, then it's okay, to be honest. But again, I'm not a professional medic. I'm not anything other than just, Joanna soap in the street. But there are ways of making things compliant. I mean, they're using all those, plastic tunnels to get talent onto the set and off again, so that the talent are completely protected from other people and that there can't be any transmission. And that seems to me incredibly sensible. But even clearly, once somebody on a shoot or on a crew has got COVID, then things begin to become.
Bring it to a much smaller. I mean, that's Mission Impossible, gigantic, huge film. But Tim MacArthur, who's one of our broadcasters and a regular guest as well, he was directing and producing a panto, 5 people, and as he said, he had to reblock. In other words, you know what I mean, but reposition everybody so that they were socially distanced on stage. It's a whole new way of thinking. Yeah. And people who don't take it seriously, I have, no respect for them. People who are trying to do their best, I have a load of respect for. Anyway, thank you for your views. I appreciate it. Phil's now dying to play your theme tune. I know. I know he. Look at that.
Well, I didn't like to say anything, but it's time for this. We do love TV, and luckily there's only one person who loves TV a little bit more than us, and that is Chantel Rickards. Chantel, obviously, it's a big couple of weeks for ordinarily it's a big couple of weeks for television coming up, but have they managed to maintain standards that we usually see over Christmas, do you think?
Well, that's a really good question, Phil. Yesterday I spent about probably a good 2.5 hours messing around on BritBox, which is an online streaming service that I've mentioned before, that's owned by BBC and ITV. It has an archive like you wouldn't believe, and it's got 200 Christmas programs. And all I can tell you is that I will probably happily spend the next 2 weeks going back over the most wonderful things that I've seen before, but probably not for 20 years. I mean, they have literally got every single Christmas episode of To the Manor Born, Keeping Up Appearances, Emmerdale, Coronation Street, every Corrie ever, every Corrie Christmas episode, Bergerac, Thunderbirds, for goodness sake. Who would have thought that there was a Christmas episode of Thunderbirds? But there was. The Avengers, Smack the Pony. I mean, it is literally a treasure trove. So I will be watching the new stuff. Most importantly, I'm going to be watching the Repair Shop Christmas special. just because I think it's one of the most lovely programs on television. But for anybody that fondly remembers Christmas of yore and the wonderful sitcoms from the 70s and 80s, and I mean, you will just have such a wonderful time if you get BritBox. And literally, I watched The Good Life and To the Manor Born, before I'd even had lunch yesterday morning, and it just put me in such a brilliant mood.
Is BritBox? We don't want to do a plug for BritBox, but I know you mentioned it, and that sounds absolutely right up my street. I love those old sitcoms, and I love their Christmas specials. Is it expensive?
No, it's not. I think it's about £5 or £6, but I think you can get a trial week for free. You might even be able to get a trial month for free. So it's
a trial week.
For Christmas.
No, I think it is a trial week. So if you time it properly, you might be able to trial it over Christmas. But the only thing that I do have a slight problem with BritBox. Okay. And I don't know whether I'm being unreasonable. So Chantal, I'm sure you're going to tell me this. BritBox, as you know, as you've rightly alluded to, owned by ITV and BBC, and it also includes programs from Channel 4 and Channel 5. So it's basically, it is supposedly the best of terrestrial television, terrestrial in the way that we knew it, not Freeview terrestrial television. Yeah. And I have a bit of an issue. The fact that you pay for a subscription to BritBox, we've technically, as license fee payers, already paid to see the BBC programs. So I can't help but feel it's a bit of a cheat and a bit of a cheek, if I'm honest, to charge people again to watch the BBC archive. I feel as though the BBC archive, and may I say, I'm speaking as someone who's been gainfully employed by the BBC. I may very well be sticking my neck on the line here, but I do feel as though it's a little bit of a cheek charging people who have already paid technically to watch it again. Now, I know some people would say, well, hang on a second, ITV have already paid for the adverts, so it's not like you sort of got you advert free now. So I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about BritBox.
You and I aren't going to agree on this, Phil. As much as I love you and sharing the Christmas spirit and all those good things, the thing is the actors have to be paid again. So somehow they've got to generate the revenue. And also it is the duty of ITV for its shareholders and BBC Worldwide, which is the commercial entity of the BBC, to make money. Now, we might not like that, but actually that is incredibly important. And one of the shows I was going to mention today, which is an extraordinary program that comes from 1983, 31 seasons of it were made. It's called The Joy of Painting, which is currently on BBC 4. It was made for the public broadcasting system in America, PBS, as they call it, which is completely funded by donations and the odd bit of sponsorship. So it's sort of America's BBC, but not the transaction of money isn't done in quite the same way. But The Joy of Painting, for those that haven't seen it, is a half-hour program. It's fronted by an extraordinary man called Bob Ross, who I think is no longer with us. But in 1983, he was a painter, and all he does is he stands in front of a canvas for half an hour. He speaks incredibly quietly. This comes from a time when the world was more gentle. The world was probably a kinder place and people were slightly more gentle. And all he does, rather like Johnny Hart, who Phil, you may not remember, but I'm sure Russ will remember, was on kids telly in the 60s and 70s. He just paints a picture over half an hour, but talks to the audience as he goes. It is the most perfect therapy.
It's hypnotic. It's completely this guy is hypnotic.
I am
hypnotic. I can't paint photography, and I'll be honest with you, Chantal, I've got no interest in painting. And yet you watch this thing and you get into this zen-like state. Yeah. He has died, by the way. He died some years ago. And it's extraordinary, isn't it? It's the weirdest thing.
I am aware of The Joy of Painting. I have sort of seen snippets of it. And I know there are some comedy programs who sort of take the proverbial out of it, say, because it's satirical as well. But first and foremost, I have to tell you that Bob Ross had the most extraordinary hair. I mean, his hair was inspired by one of the paintbrushes. There's no doubt in my mind. But
absolutely.
It's the most fascinating thing, but he actually reminds me of another program that is, and again, I don't know whether or not this chap's around it. I hope he is. But it was, have you ever seen, it was a Discovery series called The New Yankee Workshop, I think it was called.
No, I don't know it.
Right. This is a phenomenal series, and it's by the carpenter is a chap called Norm Abram, and he does very, very similar things. Okay, it was sense that he was just based in his workshop. When I say master carpenter, I mean, honest to God, that is too weak a term for Norm Abram. I very much hope he's still alive. I don't know, but I assume he is. But the most extraordinary individual who makes these things with his bare hands. Okay, he's got all of the tools around him. Don't get me wrong. He's got all of these great cutting machines and stuff like that. So, of course, it obviously helps. But he knows what to do. This is like building IKEA furniture on an extreme level, because you're cutting the wood as well as building the IKEA furniture. And it was exactly the same sort of premise. He didn't do very much other than just really talk his way through what he was doing. But it's that same kind of hypnotic effect that something is so soothing to watch a master craftsman at work.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the reason really for mentioning it. It will ease the most troubled mind. And for people who actually just want some P&Q over the holidays and just to feel better with one's life and better with the world, then The Joy of Painting is joyful, absolutely joyful. And he sold the paintings at the end of it to pay for public broadcasting television. So that was really one of the main stories about mentioning it, was to say that funded the show.
Chantal, what I've found, which I know you wouldn't do, is on YouTube, there are loads and loads of channels which have either 8 hours at a block or 4 hours at a block in 4K of fireplaces.
Indeed.
With crackling fire. And sometimes I just put it on, and the sound of the crackling fire
is wonderful.
It's blooming marvelous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
You can have some with Christmas music. It's my idea of hell. So I just have it with the sound of the crackling fire. Interesting question for you, Chantal, is from Kimmy Lashmar, birthday girl. I don't have BritBox, but does that make terrestrial TV now not bother?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Good point.
I mean, I think terrestrial TV is still making some really good material. So, I want new stuff all the time. But I still want new stuff. But there's going to become a time when actually general terrestrial television as we know it is going to become quite different to currently what we've got, and our patterns of viewing have changed enormously in the last 10 years. So most of us no longer watch to a schedule. I mean, clearly in the old days, we all knew when it was 6 o'clock, and we all knew when it was 9 o'clock, and we were sitting down and watching news at 10 o'clock. The schedule no longer exists. So everything is changing about how we consume content. It's fascinating, really.
It really is. I never thought that the whole notion of on demand, when you want it, as you want it, how you want it, would come so quickly with such huge effect. But it's interesting psychologically, and I fall straight into that trap, Chantal. I like watching ITV Hub because I catch up on all the old Poirots, because I'm obsessed with David Suchet as Poirot, and I love Agatha Christie. It's my go-to place. And I went wild this week, and for £3 or something a month, right, which is one less coffee for me, let's face it, I can go advert free.
Okay, fair enough.
It's transformative.
Is this Hub Plus, as they call it?
Yeah, I think it's Hub Plus or something. It's like £3 or something. So I'm thinking, right, so I don't have a coffee. I pay for it.
Fair enough.
It's simple as that. Or I don't buy a sandwich, and I've got change. And the difference is, of course, you watch a 2-hour Poirot special. I'm just picking that as an example. It works for everything with no ad breaks. It's blissful.
Yeah, I mean, the American 1 hour on television is about 43 minutes worth of programming for 1 hour of television. So that means that there's 17 minutes of stuff that isn't the program, which of course can be deeply irritating.
And may I say, in America, it's particularly irritating. No offense to the two of you who've lived over there. But the point for me is that I hate the way that American commercial television, the way that you're right in the middle of watching something and bang, suddenly you've got this model coming on with teeth that are whiter than vanish. And then they start saying, hey, have you tried this amazing new toothpaste? No, because I was waiting to see whether or not she'd done it. So get off. Crying out loud. Oh, I hate
Chantal, you get this, and this will back up what Phil's saying. When I went to live in America, it was back in the day, for ITV here, it would say, end of part 1, wouldn't it? Like the caption.
Absolutely.
Then a little ident would come on, and you knew you were going into the commercial break. I'd grown up on that. That's how I thought it worked around the world. I was sitting in America watching whatever it was, and suddenly the new scene comes on, and there's Ricardo Montalban, well-known film star at the time, and he's by a car. So I'm thinking, oh, here's a new character. So I'm watching this detective show. It's just a seamless next scene. And he goes, welcome to the new Cordoba, the car that I think something. I was so confused. They don't have, it just cuts straight into the break, doesn't it? There's no.
It's very the rules are the rules are different here and in the US. So for a long time in the US, you've been able to use a character that you might have seen in the program in the same advert break. Yes. The rules were the Ofcom wouldn't allow that in this country for a very, very long time, but the rules were relaxed in the last probably 5 years, so that now actually you can have an advert from Santander or Santander or whatever it is in the middle of the Santander show. So the rules are changing, but you still have to there still has to be sort of clear blue water between the content and the advert. You have to be aware it's an advert.
They were so rigid with those rules. I wasn't allowed to do a radio voiceover on the breakfast show.
Yeah.
Because they assumed that it was part of the breakfast show.
Yeah.
Now, here's a good thing from Ed Grossman. Hi, Chantal. Happy Friday. Andrew Marr's new Elizabethan show is a must watch. Loved it. Should be tried. Yes,
I think I might have mentioned it last week. If I didn't, forgive me, because I watched it and I really liked it. It's called The New Elizabethans. He takes 7 people who are supposed to be reference points, if you like, for the Elizabethan reign of our Queen Elizabeth, as opposed to QE1, QE2 reign. And he chooses really interesting people. So Tracy Emin, oh gosh, I can't even remember who was in it. But it does teach you an awful lot about really how permissive our society has become. There's an awful lot about the rise of the permissive society. It's fascinating. It's good history, and it's done in a very accessible way. So worth watching. So well done, Ed. Yeah, it's a good one.
Can I say, Kim Ashmar is hoping that you're going to up the amount of work that you do for this program, because she says, Chantal, in brackets OBE, can you put up a list of recommendations somewhere each week? I love this slot. It's such a shame it can't be on longer.
Oh, well, bless you. I definitely can put up a list. I'm very happy to do that. It's not that much work. I always keep my notes, so I know exactly what I've mentioned. And thank you for asking. I'm delighted that it's useful stuff.
I absolutely love this slot. They go, oh, I can find that. People make notes. I know they do because they tell me. Ed Grossman, you silly man. Ads used to be great when Jimmy and Jenny Hanley, I still write to her on Facebook, I'm pathetic. Jenny Hanley ran their pub on UITV in 1959.
Wow. That's going back quite a long way, probably before I was in front of a television set. Anyway, so there are some things on telly I wanted to just quickly mention before we're getting to that time where we are going to put our feet up and not do an awful lot except eat mince pies for days on end. I try and always mention a documentary, and this one I wanted to mention because it personally affected me. So last night on Channel 5 was a 90-minute documentary about, it was called The Vanishing of Susie Lamplugh. Some people will remember that in 1986, Susie, who was an estate agent on the Fulham Road in southwest London, went to meet a man who she was trying to sell a property to called Mr. Kipper, and never returned. The Susie Lamplugh Trust was created by her parents, which is a charity all based around personal safety. And for those that don't know, they also run the National Stalking Helpline. I mention that because later in my career, I actually coincidentally became a member of the Susie Lamplugh Trust. I was on the board. But what really attracted me to this story last night was that Susie had been my estate agent in 1986. And what the documentary shows is what, excuse my French, but I'll say it anyway, what seemed to be an almighty police cock-up. Now, all I can say, and just to add a little bit of information to my experience, that Susie and I spent half a day together going round 4 properties in Fulham. Last night, I got out my old Filofax diary from 1986. I found the date and entry of it. That was only 5 weeks before she disappeared. But I was never contacted by the police to say, are you Chantal Rickards? Did you spend half a day with Susie in Fulham? Did she mention she was going out with some weird bloke? So my personal experience is that everything that was said in the documentary last night adds up in terms of the fact that stuff was clearly falling between the cracks in the pavement. So it's an interesting story. It's a sad story. And here we are that many years later. And as everybody knows, there has been no solution or resolution to the story. But it's worth watching anyway.
Wow.
Susie
Chills in spine for that, seriously.
I met Susie Lamplugh's mom, had a long, by chance actually.
Lovely. Yeah.
Very, very, very charming woman. And you know what, Chantal? And I always say this, and Phil knows how strongly I feel about this. It's until you get things to that human dimension that it stops being just words on a page or blah, blah, blah on the radio or television. And it's like real. You know what I'm saying? It becomes real context. And I met her mum. We had a very long chat. She was a charming woman, and she just wanted conclusion. She wanted a resolution. Of course, she died with the matter never being resolved, which I think is the worst nightmare for anyone, but for a parent, it's unconscionable. It's awful.
Yeah, her brother features very heavily in the documentary, and I think it's absolutely sort of writ large. It's written across his face that it leaves a lot in its wake, a tragedy like that. But it's worth watching nonetheless. It's a good documentary. It's been well researched.
To this day, you've absolutely shocked me with that, especially when you just showed the Filofax from 86. Have the police ever come back and revisited and said, Ms. Rickards, we're looking back into this? Never.
No, never. No, that was why I was, because I remember the story from so long ago, but actually I thought last night in preparation for today, I would literally go back through my old diary, and I found my 1986 diary very quickly. It was a month when I was also working on Treasure Hunt. There's lots of descriptions about the different programs I was making around the country, that I'd flown off to the Isle of Man with the crew, and we'd all had a wonderful time, all sorts of great memories. But Susie is mentioned in this diary, and it was that I think I met her for half a day on the 21st of June, and by the 28th of July, she'd disappeared.
Wow.
It's just extraordinary that they never, ever found her. The whole thing is too mysterious. Where do we find that?
So that was on Channel 5 last night, so it'll be on My 5, which is the on-demand service of Channel 5.
Thank you.
So definitely worth watching.
You say that's called The Vanishing of Susie Lamplugh.
The Vanishing of Susie Lamplugh, exactly.
Can we just double check, actually, whilst you have got your 1986 diary there, do you know roughly what you were doing on, say, the 6th of August of that year?
I'm almost sure I would have been on holiday in North Wales, where I go every summer. I can look it up if you want.
Well,
August the 6th, Wednesday. Oh no, I was in London. And I had lunch with a Danish film producer.
Excellent work. Okay, that was the day I came into the world, so there you go.
Oh, well, there we are.
God, that's why I was really hoping you weren't going to dig that any deeper, because I knew it.
Right, time for quick fire. Have we got any quick fire suggestions?
Quick things. If you haven't got the BBC Sounds app, which is the BBC Sound Archive, all the BBC radio programmes in one place, you definitely need to download that.
That is included in the license fee, by the way.
That is included in the license fee. And as an absolute treat, you should be listening to Barack Obama voicing his own autobiography, which is called The Promised Land. It is just perfect listening. He is an astonishing human being, and he speaks so well. He's incredibly articulate, and you don't have to be a politics junkie to get stuff out of it. It's human, and it's really worth listening to. So that's one thing. And if you want a great box set, go back a few years. You'll find it on Netflix. It's an Australian political thriller called The Code. There were only 2 series ever made. It's extremely good. There's a young journalist who is the hero, who is sort of backed up by his Aspergic brother. And it's a very brilliant portrayal of a young man with Asperger's. But the two of them together are trying to unravel this political mystery.
Chantel, where can people find that again? Sorry.
That's The Code, and it's on Netflix. It was made by the Australian Broadcasting Company, ABC, but really worth watching, both series. They're very short, and you can sort of, just do them all in over 1 or 2 evenings, but really worth watching.
We're so out of time. Chantel, thank you so much for everything this year, and have a great Christmas and New Year. We'll see you in 2021. Goodbye. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all of the guests from today, because they've been, they're blooming amazing, really. That's it. Shall we see you in the other side of 2021, shall we?
Come on, everybody. Take care.
You feeling anxious? Online Therapy 24/7 is here to help. We offer confidential support from the comfort of your own sofa. Our highly qualified therapists are experienced in a full range of daily challenges. You'll be in safe and trusted hands. Don't suffer alone. Change your life by calling us on 0207 553 50 80 and check out our website onlinetherapy247.com.